Hills in Slovakia. So I'll be going back to France very soon now, in about a week. So my last teaching from here, but it's a very lovely place. If you're ever looking for a place that's silent, quiet, and away from whatever bothers you in Wales, like your husband or something, you can come over here. So yeah, we could do a little, just a few moments of silent meditation to bring us together. No words, but just come together in the Zoom room. We're all in the comfort of our own homes, but we can mentally gather together in some kind of Zoom room and be present together with each other. So just a few quick moments of breathing meditation, and then we'll recite the verses like we did last time. Thank you. So now we're going to recite Song of the Stages of the Path. Takes about 10-12 minutes. Before the Shakya Lord I bow my head. Your form from hosts of perfect virtues born. Your speech fulfills the hopes of boundless beings. Your mind sees as they are all knowables. Maitreya and Manjughosha I bow to you. Our peerless teachers, foremost spiritual sons, the task of all the conqueror's deeds assumed. You emanate in play to countless realms. At Nagarjuna Sanga's feet I bow. Earth's ornaments renowned throughout 3 worlds. You show just as it is the intention of the mother of the conqueror's heart to sound. A teacher, homage treasurer who holds the full and flawless pith instructions for the path of the profound view and lost deeds, passed down well by the 2 great charioteers. I bow to you, my teachers, with respect. I sing all in the scriptures moved by love. With skillful deeds you show the fortunate the best approach which leads to liberty. Of all earth's learned ones crown ornaments, their fame a banner shining forth for beings. From Nagarjuna Sangha down in line, this graded path to Buddhahood has passed. It yields all creatures' wishes without fail, apprised instruction like a powerful king, collecting myriad streams of splendid text, an ocean too of glorious eloquence. No, all his speech is contradiction free, or scriptures see as personal advice. The intention of the conqueror find with ease, safe from the chasm of the great mistake. So who with sense will not be captured by the three beings graded path supreme advice, adhered to by the many fortunate, the learned ones of India and Tibet, for certain to explain or hear but once this essence brief of scriptures all accrues, past benefit of teaching, listening to true Dharma, contemplate its meaning then. Correct and strong reliance in thought and deed upon a spiritual guide who shows the path. Know is the root cause well propitious for all excellence of this and future lives. Though life may be the cost, delight him with the offering of doing what he says. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too who yearn for freedom, do the same. Far finer than a wish-fulfilling gem, this life with leisure found, but now this once so hard to find, soon lost a lightning flash. Reflecting in this fashion, realize well, all worldly deeds are but as wind or chaff, so always seize its essence day and night. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too who yearn for freedom, do the same. Not sure death brings no birth in evil realms, convinced the triple gem relieves our fear. Take steadfast refuge, precepts untransgressed, and also it depends on this thing well, on actions black and white and their effects, then do or cast aside as should be done. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too who yearn for freedom, do the same. Form well endowed to win the highest path, till that is found there's no progressing far. Train in its causes, nothing incomplete. Its vital freed or soiled with wrongdoing stains. Be cleansed not least of karmic hindrances. Be always keen to use the full four paths. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too who yearn for freedom, do the same. Unless you strive to know true suffering's faults, no genuine urge for freedom grows thing too. On origin, samsara's causal state. If not, you won't know how to cut its root. So then despair of and renounce the world. O keen to know what binds you to the round. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too who yearn for freedom, do the same. Awakening mind, the great ways center post, support and base for mighty waves of deeds, elixir making both collections gold, a merit hoard of countless virtues massed, the hero conqueror children knowing this, Make that most precious mind their inmost bond. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. The wishing jewel of giving grants brings hopes. Fine blade that cuts the knot of meanness through. This conqueror children's deed is source and base of dauntless courage, far resounding fame. The wise ones knowing this, the good partake of giving body, wealth, and virtues all. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. Its waters cleanse away misconduct stains. Its moon rays soothe afflictions, fever pangs. Superb like mirror amidst a myriad beings, who all bow down to that no back and daunt. Morality, the noble, knowing this, adopt it well and guard it like their eyes. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. Forbearance, best adornment of the strong, the perfect means to bear affliction's sting. Garuda to the snake of hate opposed, strong arm against the weapon of harsh words. So knowing this, be trained in always in the armor of forbearance and surpassed. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. A tireless, steady, ceaseless diligence. Your insights and your scriptural knowledge grow. Wax like the moon, your acts so purposeful. Whatever work succeeds as you intend. The conqueror children, knowing this, cut off all laziness with forceful diligence. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. Then concentration, sovereign of mind, when placed like mirror, never wavering, sent forth it takes of virtuous subjects all, to body and mind great bliss appliancy brings. Great yogis knowing this resort to it, to quell our foe distraction at all times. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. And wisdom, rising suchness most profound, part to extract samsara's very root, the source of excellence in scripture praised, most famed of lamps to lift confusion's gloom. The wise who yearn for freedom, knowing this, with every effort generate the path. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. One-pointed concentration by itself, we don't see how can cut samsara's root. No wisdom lacking, calm abiding path, dispel afflictions much though it may probe. So mount the wisdom, settling how things are, upon unwavering, calm abiding steed. Wide wisdom then probe well with its sharp sword of reason's middle way beyond extremes, destroy all objects of extremist views, and so make insight into suchness vast. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. With concentration from what need to say, one-pointed focus plus discernment that precisely probes the concentration rose that's fixed and wavering on the mode of being. Amazing who sing this strive to achieve, united, calm, abiding, and inside. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. Praise those who dual voidness cultivate, In equipoise, the space like voidness, and post-meditation, the illusion like. By wisdom joined with method, then perfect the concrete children's deeds are fortunate. Sing this, don't rest content with partial paths. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. Supreme great vehicle, path, cause and effect, both need the common path that practiced well. Safe guidance from an expert pilot take, and sail the tempest that's vast ocean o'er. Heed all the pith advice, make meaningful the leisure and endowments you've obtained. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. In order to acquaint my mind with it, and serve those others with good fortune too, I have explained in plain and simple words the whole path pleasing to the conquerors. Pray all my greatest by this virtue be, not parted from the excellent pure path. I too, a yogi, made prayers in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, make the same. So now the mandala, and then refuge. That's on one of the handouts that you were sent, I hope. Refuge in English. O Sajipake Jokshik Matotram Riram To Buddha, Dharma, and find fellowship, I go for refuge till enlightenment. By my collections, giving and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for all being's sake. To Buddha, Dharma, and find fellowship, I go for refuge till enlightenment. By my collections, giving and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for all being's sake. To Buddha, Dharma, and find fellowship, I go for refuge till enlightenment. By my collections, giving and so forth, may I reach Buddhahood for all being's sake. Thank you. So this is our second sort of a slice of this text. So we'd maybe just better recap a little bit on what we what we went through last time, just quickly. So if you've got the prayer there, the first 5 verses are just kind of Tsongkhapa is sort of honoring the lineage where these teachings are coming from. He's sort of bowing down with respect, seeking their inspiration for his composition. So that lineage is a very authentic lineage coming from Shakyamuni Buddha himself down through the sort of great Mahayana Bodhisattva disciples of Maitreya and Manjughosha. And then coming down to a more earthly level, the Indian masters, the classic masters of the Indian Nalanda tradition, as His Holiness likes to call it, the Nalanda tradition of passing down the teachings of the Buddha. We have Nagarjuna and Asanga. And then one Indian Pandit, one Indian great teacher who actually came to Tibet and sort of revived Buddhism in Tibet when it was still having difficulties getting going, and a teacher whom Tsongkhapa, it seems, had visions of and sees himself very much following in the footsteps of with his Lamrim expositions, Satisha. And then finally, Tsongkhapa's actual teachers, the actual teachers that he learned from in person, doesn't mention any names. So there they are, the lineage of the Lamrim tradition, or the lineage of the Buddhist teachings, sort of then gradually focusing, becoming the Lamrim tradition. And the next few verses, they are sort of just praising this Lamrim style of exposition. I think the main thing there is for us, for all the beautiful things he says, is that you know, the Lamrim tradition makes a methodical presentation of the Buddha's teachings, and a bit more easy for us simple beings to make sense of. You know, some of the Buddha's sutras are very wonderful, aren't they? Very magnificent, and so many words, and so many different teachings for so many different types of people. So how do you make them all fit together? Don't they contradict each other? You know, sorting all those issues out. The Lamrim path makes it all kind of, you know, step by step for us. So that's very nice. And then the longer verses, which begin with correct and strong reliance in thought and deed upon a spiritual guide who shows the path. So now we're getting the actual layout of the actual teachings themselves. The first verse is there, relying on a guru, like relying on a good teacher, if we can find one. There certainly are plenty in the world at the moment, from you know, His Holiness and other great beings, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Karmapa, and great beings like that, of course. And then fond memory for some people, Geshe from Lamrim Wales, of course. So all these kind teachers who, you know, went to a lot of trouble and are still going to a lot of trouble to make sure that the teachings are passed down to us in a pure form, not just in a written form, but, you know, the realizations that those masters have. So living realizations. So, you know, examples and kind of, you know, sort of evidence that it can be done by their greatness of their realizations and behavior. And then the next verse goes down, far finer than a wish-fulfilling gem, this life with leisure found, but now this once. So there we have, you know, our sort of, whatever it is, our inheritance, our endowment, you know, this precious human rebirth, which is worth far more valuable than billions and billions and billions of dollars, because this enables us to practice the path, you know, with all a reasonable amount of the right conditions all assembled. So nothing, you know, that you could buy just with money, nothing sort of obtainable just by you know, spending your billions of dollars could buy anything as precious as this. It can't be bought with money. It has to be brought about in another way. Unfortunately, we found it. Then number 13. not sorry, that's, you haven't got numbers probably for your verses, but it's the verse that begins, not sure death brings no birth in evil realms, convinced the triple gem relieves that fear. Yes, we have got this superhuman rebirth, but it's very what, fragile, it's very fallible, you know, it's very frail, it's not going to be with us long, and you know, we'd be parted from this human body at any moment. So where will we go if we do part from this body? Well, you know, we have to be very cautious, because there seem to be a lot worse sufferings in cyclic existence than what we're experiencing at the moment. You know, we could go down to a lot kind of worse rebirth, a lot more miserable place than where we are now. So we need to be very careful, very cautious. Haven't we created the causes already to go to those places? So refuge in the first place, refuge, just refuge is a very valuable kind of, you know, a sort of practice. Even if we can't do anything else, just keep relying on the Buddhas, the Dharma and the Sangha, you know, for their inspiration, for their blessings, for their, you know, their guiding light. You know, there's something shining in our hearts, even when, you know, there's not much else that we can do in the way of Dharma practice for whatever reason. But if we go a bit further than refuge, then we have to actually do what the Buddha is advising us to do beyond that. So that is, you know, first of all, thinking about karma. Yeah, we've got to abstain from doing any more negative actions, harmful actions, those actions which will indeed, you know, if they kind of ripen up in their karmic way, will send us down to those horrible realms. You know, the suffering we put out is going to come back in our faces if we're not very, very careful. So what could be fairer than that? You know, so abandon our negative deeds, and at the same time, you know, piling up our positive deeds, our deeds for either refraining from harming others in a very sort of, you know, specifically sort of conscious way. We can take vows, for instance, you know, but definitely determining not to harm others as much as possible, live a pure kind of life, but also, you know, helping them as much as possible, which is kind of the subject of today's talk, really. And then in this way, we can hope to secure favorable rebirths and keep going on with the path as, you know, as we've been inspired to do in this life. Not only that, though, we have to, you know, purify the negative actions we've already done. You know, we've got a whole pile of rubbish in our minds, you know, let's clear it out. So this is something to do with the next verse. Form well endowed to win the highest path. Till that is found, there's no progressing far. That verse. So that is talking about, yeah, the need to at least, at the very least, you know, if we can't think of liberation, we can't think of Buddhahood at this stage, you know, at least we can, you know, do something to try and secure this precious human rebirth again in the future, you know. So favorable rebirths, sort of the minimum type of Dharma practice. And then, yeah, doing this practice of purification, which is using the full four powers. So the four powers are the four opponent powers, the four powers with which we can, you know, purify our minds, sort of clarify it, really, you know, purifying in the sense, well, we won't, you know, if we do the action of purification, then we pacify the negative karmas we have in our mind, which could ripen up to be very serious suffering for us. So we kind of, you know, inhibit their ability to ripen by you know, the purification process, and by doing more negative, more positive deeds than negative deeds. And then, you know, the purification also leads to, you know, a clarification of our minds. It makes our minds brighter. It makes our minds, you know, sort of able to understand the more subtle things that the Buddha was talking about, rather than just being carried away by the gross sort of sense pleasure objects that you know, are sort of obviously kind of, you know, tempting to us. So yeah, that's that verse then. And then the next verse, unless you strive to know true suffering's faults, No genuine urge for freedom grows. Think too on origin, samsara's causal stage. That verse. So that verse takes us, deeper into our Buddhist studies, deeper into the Four Noble Truths. So with a deeper insight, we can see, well, all of cyclic existence has got these drawbacks, its troubles. It's not just, we might go to some unfavorable rebirth where, we're suffering, in a kind of, right down on the really deep suffering end of the spectrum, the spectrum of happiness, suffering. We get reborn much further down that spectrum of suffering where suffering is very intense and excruciating. Yes, okay. But even if we're born in the more fortunate, the more kind of fashionable addresses of cyclic existence where people would like to be born, in the God realms or something, or even just born as a well-off, a rich human being, well, even those sort of places of what you can say high status in cyclic existence, they also, when we think about it, have all, a sort of a kind of, all the basic drawbacks of samsara are still there. Even if we're not grossly suffering, we're suffering in a sort of a more sort of, still a definite way, but it's not quite so easy to identify. But still, we have, plenty of dissatisfaction and plenty of, confusion. So when we study the Four Truths, then we learn a bit about that. This verse isn't so much talking about the Four Truths altogether, but it's talking about the first two more than any of the others. So, when we study the Four Truths properly, we see clearly how much suffering there actually is in the world, and then, begin to understand what might be causing it. Then we can start thinking about, well, what about the complete cessation of suffering? What about actually getting out of suffering altogether? Is that possible then? And the Buddha is assuring us, yes, it is. There is the truth of cessation of suffering. And there's a path to that cessation. And we can travel it just like the Buddha did. He started off as a, common human being like we did, when he renounced his kingdom and went off on his search. So we can be just like him. There's nothing to stop us. We've got the Buddha nature. So, with these thoughts, then we determine, yes, well, why not admit that life in suffering, in cyclic existence is a load of suffering? If there's an alternative, it's worth doing that. If there's no alternative, then we make the best of it. But if there is an alternative, if there is cessation, there is a path to that cessation that we can travel, then there's no need to be satisfied with putting up with the trials and troubles of psychic existence. We can go for that state of nirvana. So we could talk a bit more about suffering, but the growth sufferings of birth, aging, and death. This is what Buddha saw when he went out of the palace on his exploratory trips. When he was the royal prince. He'd brought up in a life of luxury, but when he started to look outside, what's outside the palace gates, and he found, amidst the poverty or whatever, the simplicity of other people's lives, he found birth, aging, sickness, and death kind of, struck him deeply. So you can say the gross sufferings of psychic existence. But you can see having a body like ours is just, we're doomed to those conditions. And, the body is kind of, full of that kind of tendency, to let us down. And it will do sooner or later. So it's not like we just have to be sick to know that sickness is suffering. We know it's always going to come. It's always going to catch us up. So even in our states of happiness and good health, we know it's only a temporary kind of, sort of advantage of our youth or something, that we can have these states where we can say, we're healthy, and that sickness is going to catch us up, death is going to catch us up. So it's kind of a suffering, even if we're healthy, to know that these happy states are just temporary and transient, passing, like the fading of the flowers at the end of spring. So, this body has got like, it has its glamour side, doesn't it? It has its sort of, attractive, appealing, kind of very fair, beautiful, rainbow-like kind of beauty, but it's also got its, its clumsiness, hasn't it? Its drawbacks. We have to keep feeding ourselves so many times a day, and washing ourselves, doing so much of our activities in our life just to keep this body satisfied and kind of workable, and it takes so much effort, so much money is required, and so forth. So maybe there is a state where we don't have to have such a sort of an impure kind of bodily support to get on with what we want to do. Anyway, so that was the talk about suffering, where this verse that I just quoted it leads us to, you see. So that, yes, if cyclic existence is this continual, revolving, of sort of temporary happiness, but guaranteed suffering, and kind of just floundering around in that confusion without really knowing how to do anything about it long term, just always trying to apply short-term solutions, then maybe it's time we tried a different approach. How long have we been in cyclic existence after all? Very long time. And how much time have we got left? Well, potentially also a very long time. So you want to stay here, or you want to try something different? You never know. But that was all kind of the last month's talk. This month is we're going on to the next verse, and a slightly different kind of what shall we say, a slightly different perspective. So before I read Tsongkhapa's verse, I will introduce this different perspective with a verse from Togme Sampo, the 37 Practices. So he says, "When mothers who've forever cherished me are suffering, what use my own content? To free all boundless beings then arouse awakening mind. So does a conqueror's child." So that's the Bodhisattva approach. The conqueror's child is the Bodhisattva, of course. And who are the mothers? Well, they're your mothers, our mothers. Yeah, they're other sentient beings, of course. And they forever, since this beginningless time, they've been cherishing me. They've been loving me. Yes, I wouldn't say I've had a mother in every birth I've ever taken, but, in many, many, many of them. And the birth since beginningless time. So think how far back that is. There's no beginning. So how many mothers I can have had? Truly an uncountable number. And they're suffering. Yeah? So what use is just my own happiness? If I'm just going for my own happiness, for this individual liberation, my own peaceful, private, wonderful nirvana. But what use is it if all my mothers, they're all just, still locked into that suffering? Yeah, I'm released, but they're still in lockdown. What's the point, Why should I be happy about that? So Togme says, to free all boundless beings, so there's a vast number of beings we're talking about, but never mind. Boundless number of beings. Then arouse awakening mind. So awakening mind, bodhicitta, spirit of enlightenment. Quite a few different translations into English, but we know what we're talking about, I hope. Bodhicitta, awakening mind, the spirit of enlightenment, the mind of enlightenment. So that's Togme Sampa's inspiration. So let's just read what Tsongkhapa says, and then introduce the subject a bit more. Yeah, so this is where we are today then, awakening mind. So I'll just read what Tsongkhapa says about it now, and then, you know, as we get a chance, we'll go through the words. Awakening mind, the great way's center post, support and base for mighty waves of deeds, elixir making both collections gold, and merit hoard of countless virtues massed. The hero conquer children, knowing this, make that most precious mind their inmost bond. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. So I expect most people listening here, I guess, have heard the talk about bodhicitta previously. I'm not introducing it to people who've never heard of it, so that's that means we can get on with a bit of meditation, which I'd like to do for the before we go up to our break time. So that'll be break at 12 o'clock for half an hour, right? So just a bit more talk, then we'll have a good half hour's meditation. So as Tsongkhapa says, the awakening mind is the great way's center post. So I don't know whether he's thinking of a house which is just built around a central pillar, you know, a simple kind of house you see like in Africa. There's one central pillar in the house, and the thatched roof is a sort of circular thatched roof and a circular wall, mud wall. So then the center post of the house is like very, you know, that's like the main thing that keeps everything together. It's the main sort of, you know, item in the house. This center post is like very, obviously very important. But I've never seen houses like that in Tibet, you know, so I wonder, maybe in the old days.
This is a Smile Direct Club aligner. It's how...
Or it might be referring to tents, you know, like a tent can have a central pole, can't it? But again, I'm not sure that the classic, you know, nomad tent of, you know, the black yak hair tent of Tibet had a central pole. I don't know. Maybe they do. Anyway, we can see what the sort of what the metaphor is, can't we? So if you're on the path to Buddhahood, then, you know, if you're on the Bodhisattva path, if you're on the Mahayana path, then this is a central thing, awakening mind, bodhicitta. In Tsongkhapa's commentaries on the Lamrim, he uses the word Mahayana a lot. He says, now we're going to talk about the Mahayana vehicle, you know. We've talked up to this point about, you know, practices in common with, you know, Buddhists in general who are seeking liberation. But when we talk about going to Buddhahood, the Bodhisattva path, then we're talking about the Mahayana vehicle, the great vehicle. But you see, you know, that's a bit pejorative, because if you say that we're the great vehicle, then the other guys are the lesser vehicle, the guys are just going for their own individual liberation, it's a bit pejorative. It's a bit, you know, those guys might feel that they are being, you know, put down a bit. And, you know, you might find people in, you know, Burma, Thailand, Sri Lanka, identifying with that kind of path. So you might find they would be a bit, you know, unhappy, or a bit sort of, you know, question the idea that, you know, well, we're the Hinayanists, the small vehicle guys, and they're the great vehicle guys, as if you might feel a bit of a put down to them. So Bodhisattva vehicle might be better. Anyway, anybody who's on the path of Buddhahood, then, you know, it's bodhicitta is a thing. If you have developed bodhicitta, then you are classed as being on the path of Buddhahood. If you haven't yet developed it, then you haven't yet got on to the path to Buddhahood. So it's like the entranceway, the gateway. It's the yeah, it's the dividing line or whatever, the criterion for saying, are you on the Buddhist path or not? So if you ask me, am I on the path of Buddhahood? Well, I'd like to think I am, but maybe, but I can't say I am. Am I getting near to Buddhahood? It'd be nice to think so, wouldn't it? You know, okay, so therefore I'm on the path to Buddhahood because I am getting near to Buddhahood. But it's a bit uncertain, I guess. Until you developed, you know, stable bodhicitta, then you know, you can deviate off and lose the path. And you know, I've got many causes in my mind to be reborn as an animal or something. Many causes in my mind to reborn as something worse, you know, because I've done lots of negative actions, and one of those could ripen up, couldn't it? So, you know, it's hard for me to say right now, I am on the path of Buddhahood. If, you know, in the next life I could be reborn down somewhere horrible where I won't have much time to do any Dharma practice, and I might spend all my time doing negative actions because I'm so, you know, confused and bewildered. And you know, if you're born into the life of a dog or something, or a cat, or a bird who's trying to feed its babies in the springtime, then you're going to do lots of negative actions, killing other creatures for your own, you know, feed yourself or your family. So is that progress towards Buddhahood? Doesn't sound like it, does it? So you've got to have bodhicitta, then you can say you're on the path to Buddhahood. Then we'll get, you know, then we'll be sort of praising you and admiring you, somebody who's made it that far. And that's what Shantideva does. So this is Shantideva, a guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. And he says, the moment helpless beings bound in the prison of psychic existence develop this spirit of enlightenment, they are called children of the Sagatas. And also, I have been born in the Buddha's family. I have become a child of the Buddhas. That's because I developed awakening mind, you see, bodhicitta. So very much that's when you are, you know, that's when the Buddha's really pleased with you. You're on the path of Buddhahood. So that's the Bodhisattva vehicle. So that's, you know, giving the meaning of Tsongkhapa saying, yes, awakening mind, the great way center post. It's all built up and around that. Compare the correct view of emptiness, you see. You know, even if you're just going for individual liberation, even if you're just going for your, you know, personal nirvana, you've still got to realize emptiness. And it's the same subtle emptiness that people who are going to Buddhahood realize. It's the same subtlety of realizing, you know, no self. So realizing no self or selflessness, emptiness on its own, that's not, you know, a unique cause or kind of a guaranteed cause for Buddhahood. Because even the people going for their own individual liberation realize that too. So the one that makes your progress, you know, uniquely towards Buddhahood, that's your bodhicitta. And what is bodhicitta? Well, you know, it's the mind generation, the generation of the mind generation for others' sake. Mind generation is for others' sake the wish for perfect, full enlightenment. Now that's from Maitreya. Mind generation is the Mahayana mind generation, bodhicitta. Mind generation is for others' sake the wish for perfect, full enlightenment. Yeah, so two components: wishing to help other sentient beings. That's kind of your main motivation. And how are you going to get there? By becoming a Buddha. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Really, that's the main thing. So that's kind of, you know, what we're going to look at now. So as we know, then the bodhicitta is like the orientation of it. The fundamental orientation of it is towards helping others. So you're helping others, helping to them to achieve happiness, helping them to kind of for the benefit of them. That's what your life's about now. And then how are you going to do that? Well, you've got to become a Buddha. So that's, you know, that's the best way, right? There's many ways you can help others, but to do it really skillfully, do it really well, then being a Buddha, there's no better sort of station. There's no better kind of vantage point to do it from than that. So that's our goal, to find out the most effective way of helping others. Yeah, and we can develop, it's not like, oh, we've just got to do the best we can with whatever resources we've got now. Well, that's fair enough. We should. Whatever we are now, then the more we can help others, great. But you compare me or somebody like that with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, somebody who's really developed themselves, sort of spiritually, let's say, and really generated the mind of bodhicitta. Their capacity to help others is so much vaster, isn't it? They have so much more energy. And they have so much, sort of understanding of people's problems, where they're coming from, so much sympathy for others, that they can really do far better than somebody who's just, the ordinary person who's, good-hearted and has a bit of money to spend. They can do so much, but how skillful are they really being? And how can they lead people really out of suffering completely altogether? So we have to develop ourselves. It's not just saying, oh, I'll help others. From where I am now, thank you very much. That's great. It is great. But then we want, to be better and better at it. We want more and more resources and skill, and they're going to come, as we, get closer to Buddhahood until, the final, highest point of evolution, Buddhahood itself. Yeah. So we're talking about a series of lifetimes. Yeah, we're not just talking about just what we can manage in this life. Yeah? Don't think like that. We're not just let's do the best in our life, and when we get older, we feel satisfied that we really helped people as much as we could. That's fantastic, yeah. But we've got to be thinking in a much vaster kind of time scale. Well, why not? If we are going to be around, if our mind is going to be evolving for the rest of whatever time there is, which is why should time ever stop? So we are in a we're in a state of transformation, ongoing forever, as there is forever. So why not aim for the highest? Because we've got all the time in the world. What else should we be doing with all those lives ahead of us? Just enjoying the simple pleasures that we enjoy now, and very lucky to enjoy them. When we've got so much time, so many lives ahead of us, isn't it time to be doing something really grand? Have a really grand conception of what our life could really be about. And really, go for some sort of really exalted status. We have all those lives in which we can achieve it. So we should set our ambitions very high and go for Buddhahood. So it's not like if you're playing cricket, you just go to the wicket, and you start batting, right? But it's a very long innings, yeah. It's a very long batting. Got to stay there, not just 100 runs, countless runs. Yeah. So why not just go to individual liberation? Why not just go to individual liberation? It's much quicker. Isn't it? Why spend all that time batting, countless runs? Why? Well, it is a much shorter journey to go to individual liberation, so they say. But, they say that once you get there to that state of individual liberation, then you're in a kind of a state of suspension. You've suspended your compulsion to take rebirth. You're no longer compelled into, rebirth in samsara. And it becomes very difficult for you, so they say, to reach out to others then. You're just meditating sort of on emptiness in a state of, suspension, and, your mind is just evolving, but it's just focused on emptiness. And you never arise out of that meditation, and it's like you are, you're separated from your fellow citizens of the universe. They're all somewhere else. You're away in some remote place, and you can't reach out to psychic existence. So there's nothing you can do for your mothers, your suffering mothers. So that's the whole point of awakening mind, that you don't go to that kind of a secluded location, that secluded retreat where you're cut off from everybody else. You stay with it, you stay with cyclic existence, not kind of, caught up in cyclic existence like an ordinary being, but working for the benefit of beings in cyclic existence. That's how we've got to think. So I suggest we do a bit of meditation now. That's enough talking at for 1 hour. And so I thought we could do the sevenfold meditation to generate bodhicitta. And this is the 6 cause and 1 effect meditation. And I think we'll do this again in the 2nd hour. So if we don't perfect it in this first time, we'll do it again coming up, 2nd time round. We've only got half an hour, so we can't really go into great detail. But I'm guessing that people have done it before. So we can sort of, move through the points in a sort of smooth manner without staying too long explaining. So I suggest we take a few breaths, silent meditation on the breath, just to start with, and then bring in our reflections. So let's take our inspiration from the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. They're not kind of samsara, they're not dwelling as samsaric beings like we are, but the Buddhas appear, are very close to us. They are not remote from samsara. So we can visualize Shakyamuni Buddha before us, objects of refuge. He can represent the Sangha also. He is a member of the Sangha jewel. He's the Buddha jewel and the Sangha jewel. He's a member of the Sangha. He's realized emptiness directly in the right way. And then, the mind realizing emptiness directly, and the emptiness that it realizes, they are the Dharma jewel. They're the Dharma jewel because they are what cuts you free of cyclic existence. They are the antidote to the self-grasping, which is, the main spring, the main cause of samsara. So we can take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha like that. We're just visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni in front of us. So let's be confident there is an antidote to cyclic existence. Then Buddha doesn't just give us comfort. He can actually, show us the way right out of all suffering altogether with his technique, meditation on emptiness and so forth. Very, very good. But we've got to broaden our scope now. So we want to bring in all sentient beings. So just imagine how vast the universe is, yeah? We're centered here in our little room, and our minds are in our little Zoom room together. But beyond that, the vastness of the great universe. Look up at the night sky when the stars are bright. And think of a firework, a firework like a Roman candle. It shoots up something into the air, into the night sky, and it bursts like in a great glitter of sparkles. So that's just like the Big Bang, and all these planets and suns and galaxies just burst out of this Big Bang. We're just like that little firework, that all those silver sparkles are all the worlds and planets and suns of this galaxy just spreading outwards, apparently, but on a huge scale, so vast. And I don't say there is sentient life in every corner of the universe, but where you do find sentient beings, there seem to be so many of them. Whenever there is a space for life, so many different kinds of creatures, so many billions of creatures are just on one planet. So then the vastness of the number of sentient beings in that universe. And then the third vastness is the vastness of the time scale. So ahead of us and behind us, beginningless time, and behind us, and endless time ahead of us. So looking back, beginningless time, what does that really mean? It's like you have to imagine time without beginning. So it's quite difficult. But there never was a beginning. Time has always been like a flowing river, like a spring that comes rushing out of the ground and is just flowing and flowing and flowing and flowing. Never ever stopped. It never ever began. Just a steady, steady flow, the river of time. We're flowing down the river of time, I don't know, or the river of time is flowing through us. So the little sandbank in the river of time emerges out of the waters, and then seeds drift across onto the sandbank, and plants grow, then insects come, and then it's like we're born on a little sandbank in the middle of this river of time. And then, the river changes course and the sandbank is swept away, or the river rises from a flood and the sandbank is submerged. A little life is ended, and another one, and another life, and another life, and it's just been going on since forever. So, in how many of those lifetimes then? In how many of those, beginningless rebirths have we had a mother who gave birth to us? Not in all the lifetimes. It doesn't say that every life we've ever had here, in being born into this universe, in somewhere in one of the realms, we've had to have a mother. No, it doesn't say every life, but so many lives. Then, so many mothers. So even though the number of human beings and the number of sentient beings in this life, in this world, in this universe is so very, very vast. Still, an enormous, enormous, enormous number of them have had the chance to be our mother, had the likelihood of being our mother, because we have been coming from beginningless time, a beginningless series of lives. Yes, of course, it's also true that other beings have preyed on us and taken our lives, eaten our bodies. And at other times, people have been very harmful to us. And we've lived miserable lives because of the oppression of others, or they've damaged us, or they've stolen from us, or they've, um, victimized us. There's many other situations where other sentient beings have done us great harm. But that doesn't rule out the kindness, does it? Even so, when they were kind, they were kind. When they were, crazy with some delusion or under the compulsions of their, the needs of their bodies or needs of their children to feed, and we were, their opportunity, and they took advantage of us. Still, in the times they did help us, the times they were kind to us, well, they were, we benefited from them. So evening all of those things out, and very wholesome to remember the times of their kindness, the times of their love. That's when things felt really good. That's just what we needed. We were helpless. We were little babies. We were new in the world. And our mothers, when they were doing the thing right, of course, not all mothers do treat their children very, very well. Of course, there are some exceptions. Of course, there are some, difficulties, family problems. But in general, the ideal, the average, is the mother so kind, so dedicated, so wonderful, such an object of great importance, great benefit to the little babies, little children, the growing offspring. So whenever we have made some progress in life, it has always been with the help of many others. Countless others. Whether we're talking about the food we eat, or the transport we use, the clothes we wear, and whatever comforts we have, the houses we live in this life, and similar things in previous lives. We always they always come about through the efforts of others, the sacrifice of others, others giving up their lives, where we're building a new house, or making some materials that are going to be useful for construction of whatever, manufacture whatever. Other creatures are in the way. They have to yield up their living space or even their lives, and for the food we've eaten, the meat we've eaten, and so forth. And for all the positive help we've been given by teachers and kind of people who kind of run their society without it collapsing into anarchy, or the people who are quite devoted in their jobs, even if their job is a humble job, still they'd like to do it responsibly and do it well, not just for the money, but out of some sort of self-satisfaction that they did the job properly. So we've always benefited. But out of those all, we can say the mother is perhaps the most, the most precious, the most striking. She really loved us, and we really enabled us to grow when we had an object of love that we could love in return. That helps our healthy childhood development, this exchange of love between the child and the parents. So important for the child's psychological development. So if somebody has been a mother, then they've done such a service to us. They've done such a probably such a load of negative actions on our behalf. If you think of a little bird in the garden in the spring, who brings so many little insects or little caterpillars to the nest for its young ones, so many actions of killing just to feed her little children. So the kindness of the mother is absolutely staggering. The sacrifice. So we remember that, and then think, all people have been like that. All creatures have been like that. There's no one we can point to and say they weren't our mother. Such an enormous number of births we've had where we've had a mother. If we think of beginningless time, the river of time forever flowing. So many births we've taken. Never had a beginning. So many beings then have been our mother, wherever we look, And it's hard to say, well, that person was never my mother. How can you be sure? So what's the point of thinking like this? Well, there's a great point. We want to, bring our affection for others up to the correct level. If they have been so kind to us, then it's wonderful. And we should, naturally, somebody who's been kind to us, done a lot of things for us, we'll feel affection for them. They will appear to us in like a pleasing light, in an endearing light. Pleasing and endearing appearance. That's why my mother anyway, appeared so beautiful, so wonderful to me, even when she was 90 years old, even when she was over 90. Very weary, she still appeared so beautiful to me. And I guess that was because she had been so kind, and that was just sort of in my memory. So we get all people to appear like that, in that very endearing way. We feel great affection for them, affectionate love, pleased to see them. So on the basis of that kind of affectionate love or pleasing love, then we can develop the love which wishes them to have happiness. And at the same time, because we see that they are seriously, suffering, confused, wrapped up with the afflictions, the mental afflictions, not having a clear idea of practice that takes them beyond this life, beyond suffering and the long term, or just getting old, getting ill, difficulties. So naturally, along with the wish for them to have happiness is the compassion wishing them to be free from suffering. So we build that, sense of affection for all beings so that, that's only what's due to them from their kindness. And then, on that basis, we strongly wish to help them when they are in difficulties. We strongly wish to be of any benefit we can to them. So this is the development of love, compassion. Great love, great compassion, because that means it refers to all beings without exception. That's great compassion, great love. Not leaving anybody out. And we make that great compassion, great love very strong. Then we say, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I will take responsibility. Never mind what anybody else does. My resolve, my special resolve is that I will help those people. I will help those creatures. I'll help them all in temporary ways and in final ways, to get them really beyond all their problems altogether. So that's a kind of great determination. And we see that the way to do that is to become Buddha. We must become Buddha because the Buddha has all the skill, all the resources, all the ideas, just fitting sensitivity and the great energy and the endless compassion. So we have to think, end the meditation by thinking, yes, I really must go all the way to Buddhahood then. So that will be the fulfillment of my own and others' purposes. I'm here in this life just for a short time, but the future is unfolding. So my presence, my mind will be continuing to transform. So let me just go for the highest level, Buddhahood. That will complete my own evolution, but that's my great contribution to the help, to the help that all these other sentient beings, they need too. So for their sake, I'm going to Buddhahood, and that's my determination. Bodhicitta, awakening mind. So the quotation from Maitreya, ornament for clear realizations again. Mind generation is, for others' sake, the wish for perfect, full enlightenment. So we can stop there now. Do a little dedication of our merits so far. So we stop there for half an hour now. Tea break. Any questions you've got, please prepare them, or get them sent to chat or something, whatever Jason suggests. Usually we send them to chat, or you can ask them in person probably if there's not so many people. So you're welcome to come up with the questions, have a bit of a discussion. See you in half an hour. Or an early morning sherry, whatever it was. Well, it's afternoon now. Afternoon sherry. I've got one question in the chat, Jason. So I'll deal with that question. And anybody else who's got a question, they're welcome to ask. You can put your hands up. You've got a question, Jason. He's put his, he's made the hand sign, so he's got a question. Well, the one in the chat. I don't know if everybody can see it, if they click on the chat box. Anyway, it's a very short one. Good. Short questions are good. They're much better than long ones for thinking about. So my question is it another want in life to be striving for Buddhahood? Yeah, well, this, what we're talking about, this bodhicitta, is definitely, it's definitely sort of a want or a wish or a desire. We can say aspiration, but it's in that line. It's definitely a wish. You wish to help other beings. You wish to be effective in helping other beings. And how are you going to do that? You wish to be a Buddha. So yes, it's definitely that kind of thing. But is that such a bad thing? I mean, the suggestion is that maybe that's a bad thing if you want to have another want in your life. Isn't that the wrong approach to life, sort of thing? Well, I don't know. You know, if we want happiness, we want to avoid suffering. That's kind of a very natural natural way we are, isn't it? Don't we all wish for happiness and wish to avoid suffering? Isn't that just a sort of a natural, a given part of our sort of makeup? So I think, you know, if it is, I don't think that's something we have to deny and get rid of, personally. But if you start wanting your happiness with attachment, that's a different thing. You know, when you want happiness with attachment, then it becomes problematic, because that's when you start saying, you know, okay, so long as I get my happiness, it doesn't matter about other people so much. My happiness is more important than anybody else's happiness. And that's when the problems start, isn't it? So that's when you'll get, you know, people have sexual cravings. That's when sexual abuse occurs, you know, where somebody's so desperate to satisfy their own inclinations, their own urges, that if other people, you know, suffer because of that, then, you know, that's just unfortunate, you know, but I got to have my happiness. Or, you know, that's when stealing occurs. You know, my happiness is more important than yours, so I'm going to take what you've got and have it for myself. So that's, you know, that's with attachment. So that means that you're considering your happiness to be more important than anybody else's. And that's you know, that's not justifiable, is it? You know, how can your happiness be more important than anybody else's? Oh, you say, well, my happiness is more important than anybody else's because it's happiness for me. You know, who's going to look after me if I don't? So you're saying my happiness is more important. But then everybody else is going to say the same then, you know, if everybody is saying my happiness is more important than your happiness, then you're just going to have conflict, aren't you? Whether it's conflict between, you know, two people or two nations. You know, that's we see the extremely unfortunate results of that kind of attitude all over the world. You know, one country invading another, wars, and, you know, people of one religion fighting with people of another religion, just because they say, you know, we are more important than you because we have flat noses, or we are, you know, we have big ears, or we have, you know, different colored skin or something. You know, so that's the one thing that we've got to erase. That's the one we can see is actually illogical when we think about, you know, how can my happiness actually be more important than yours? You know, you're just another sentient being like me. So we're both in the same boat. Let's row in the same direction, help each other. Yeah, so if you get to that state of solitary nirvana, maybe it is a case of you give up wanting anything because you are in this steady state of peaceful meditation on emptiness and nothing else. So you'd be like, all desires maybe have come to an end because you are just absorbed in absolute selflessness. There's no self appearing to want anything, not a conventional self or anything, because you're just meditating on reality where there's not even a sense of subject and object. You are just holding yourself in on meditation at the ultimate level, and you never come back to the conventional level. So there's never any sense of I, subject, object, grasper and grasped at. It never emerges. But we're not recommending that as our goal. We're saying that is all very well for that individual, but what about all your mothers circling around in samsara? So we do want to help them. So we want to maintain a presence in the conventional world. We don't want to be hooked by attachment. That's all too easy, yes. The afflictions of mind are very subtle and they can easily get us. And, but somehow we work in samsara without being, overcome by those afflictions, even though we have, bodies and kind of, birth states which predispose us to have afflictions, and we've got these sort of minds with lots of afflictions in them, but still we say yes, but we're still going to go for Buddhahood. We're going to get reborn in psychic existence and go for Buddhahood, in spite of the difficulty of doing that. So that's a virtuous desire then. Yeah, it's not a desire with attachment. I want to be famous, or I want to be a Buddha because it feels so cool to be a Buddha. You want to do it for other beings. So that's what we mean by a virtuous desire then. Virtuous, it's some fancy spiritual word. No, virtuous just means it's productive of happiness. A virtuous action is one that in the long term works out as happiness for yourself or for others. And a non-virtuous action is one that works out, with in the end, maybe some slight advantages, but in the end, suffering for you and others. So the wish to get to Buddhahood is a wish that's productive of happiness. So it's worth pursuing. The productive of the greatest happiness. So I think that's about all I've got to say on that one. Shall I answer? There's another one's come up here, Jason. I haven't read it yet. Shall I answer that one first?
Yeah, from Malcolm, yeah.
Yeah, what does it say then?
What about when you need help, say because you're convalescing? Is it okay not to need help at this time? What are the consequences?
Yeah, I can read it. It's okay. I can see it. I'm just...
okay.
Thank you,
yeah.
Jason. Yes, when you yourself need help because you're convalescing, it's okay not to be helping anybody else at that time. That's at a time when you need help. I think that's what the person is saying. Yeah, I mean, you can't be running around, working 24 hours a day, sort of rescuing people from whatever they need help, That's quite understandable. We are beginners, and we will have times when we need to, take care of ourselves and not stress out. So we're no use to anybody if we're totally stressed out because we've been, overdoing it. We've got to keep moderation. Some people like Dalai Lama or His Holiness Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and you can see how they can even go without sleep to an extent that we could not possibly do because they're so energized by their bodhicitta clarity or whatever. But they do have enormous energy. But they're special people, people like us. We have to take it as at a level that we can cope with, yeah. And bodhicitta it's a lot about meditation. It's not just about rushing out and kind of going to volunteer to do difficult jobs in the practical world, which is all very admirable, and sort of when I was in Africa, you could see how the Christians had gone out to Africa in the days of the old imperial days, and yes, they tried to convert people to Christianity, but they've done so much good work in terms of building hospitals and starting schools, that you kind of you had to you know, admire their ideal of Christian love was that they went out and you know, provided facilities for people who kind of could really use them. So that's great, but you know, the idea of getting to Buddhahood also involves, you know, your mental progress, you know, your mental ability to really get rid of this self-cherishing, which is growing out of your self-grasping, this sort of, you know, clinging to yourself as being so important, and this false ego that we are sort of a slave to. You know, it sort of dominates our mind to say, you know, I must have this, I must have that, I'm unhappy, I'm bored, you know, I'm not being treated fairly. You know, this kind of sort of attachment to yourself. You know, you've got to overcome that. And how do you do it? By it requires a lot of careful thought, meditation, and you know, getting close to the subtle kind of ideas that the Buddha's trying to put over. So when you're convalescing and you're still not too tired, you know, you can. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot to meditate on. You know, bringing all sentient beings to that point where they do appear in a pleasant aspect to you and a worthy aspect that this person's worth helping. You know, and try and apply that gradually to all sentient beings in the universe. It takes a lot of, you know, meditation. People go into quiet retreats in sort of remote places to really concentrate on their own mind. So that's a very valid thing to do too. Getting to Buddhahood requires, you know, realizing emptiness, very subtle subject. So there's a plenty you can do when you are just quiet and not able to, you know, get out and do practical things in the world, particularly. Okay, Jason, I think it's your turn.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. They're both very short, but maybe just ask one. But the one challenge I have when you're trying to, if you like, generate compassion for, say, mother beings, is it not the case that they have a compulsion by nature to do it?
To do what? Right?
To care, to look after.
Oh yeah, the mothers, yeah.
So, you know what, you know, yeah. Why does it warrant such level of returned respect, so to speak, when it's no different than a major biological urge to do the caring, perhaps?
Yeah, I guess it is, and it's a kind of attachment, you can say. And mother, in a way, has got to think of her own child as being more important than other children. You know, usually we suspicious about that kind of, you know, privileging. You know, you know, you're so important, but these other people who are not of my family or not of my nation or not of my tribe or something, they're not so important. It's our group, you know, it's our tribe. We are important. So you tend to be suspicious about that kind of attitude. You know, that's going to lead to problems. But a mother, you see a mother sheep in a field, she will only feed her own babies. She won't, if another little lamb comes to her to get fed, then the mother sheep probably won't feed. You know, it'll just kick her away as like a mistake, isn't it? And that's kind of justified because, you know, the survival of her own children depends on her milk. So, you know, she's got a special responsibility. So it's only fair that kind of attachment of a mother to a child, which forms, I presume, at birth in normal circumstances, and for the child, for the mother, that's kind of a healthy attachment in a way. So it's kind of not quite the attachment that I think the sort of teachers warn us against. But still, you know, even if she's doing it out of some sort of biological urge like that, you know, some sort of evolved kind of, you know, trait of mind which is found useful for the survival of the species or something, you know, if you talk about it in scientific terms, that she's just following a sort of a compulsion in looking after her children so well. Yeah, but that doesn't reduce the fact that it's really helpful to you, does it? And she has really seen you in such glowing terms, you know, even if you're a little kind of ruffian or naughty boy, you know, she still thinks you're the most wonderful thing in the world. You know, you've got to sort of acknowledge that and be, you know, kind of sort of very grateful for it, or, you know, like you've got to sort of appreciate that anyway, haven't you? So yeah, even the person who sweeps the street outside your house or something, you know, the council's road sweeper, if we have any of them anymore, or whatever. Some people doing some very mundane job, you know, paid for by the council or something, you know, cleaning the windows of the town hall or something like that, you know. I mean, they're not doing it for your stake, but it's of a benefit for you, isn't it? It's still, and the Tibetans would call that a kindness. The kindness of other sentient beings, you know, it's like they're not okay. They're not doing it for you specifically, but they're doing the job, and you know, the end result of it is some benefit for you, and they might be getting a very low wage as well for doing that job. You know, so you still got to appreciate it. They're not doing it out of, you know, just pure love for you, but still it's a kindness because it's a benefit to you. So you should appreciate that. And yeah, then anybody who does you a kindness like that, you've got to reciprocate when the chance comes. See what I mean? And mothers do have love, don't they? You can't say it's all attachment. You can't say it's all biological necessity or something. I mean, a mother does love a child just for the child's. She just wants the own child's own happiness. It's more than just attachment, isn't it? So there's another remark in the chat. So why do Buddhist monks wear special robes and ask the community for food? So we're getting off the point here, off the point of bodhicitta, but never mind. Buddhist monks wear special robes. Well, I think that's to remind them that they're Buddhist, that they're monks, right? You know, you make monks' vows, and you wear monks' clothes, and you have a monk's name. You know, you're supposed to change your appearance, your name, and then, you know, your behavior. So those are the three things you change. So one of them is your clothes, and that's to remind you that you are, you know, you're dedicated to a different way of life from samsaric beings who like to go down and, you know, just enjoy the ordinary sense pleasures. But not everybody has to be a monk. You know, people can work just as well as monk, maybe better, you know, and do more Buddhist practice. We're not saying the monks are the only ones who do special good Buddhist practice. But, you know, if the ones who are trying to be, you know, more single-minded about it, they take vows to modify their behavior so that they're more strictly, you know, living an ethical way of life. And I think it helps, you know, because otherwise you do get distracted by, you know, temptations or, you know, things which, you know, will take up your time, even if they're not specifically negative. They kind of, you know, just not so single-minded on good Dharma practice. But when you wear the robes, it's like it's reminding you, like your vows, to keep you on a more sort of, you know, single-minded track. And then asking for the community for food. Well, I think in Buddha's time, you know, that was the education system. There weren't schools where you could go, primary school, secondary school, and learn about how to be an architect or how to be kind of, you know, an accountant or something. You know, it was all a bit more. There was much less of a formal education system, like secular way. You know, okay, your dad is a blacksmith or something, so you learn the same trade as your dad. Yeah, or your dad is, you know, sells jewels or something, so you learn the ins and outs of selling jewels and the work in the family jewel business or something. But a kind of, you know, a sort of a formal education system, it didn't exist. So the Buddhists come along, and other you know, religious groups in India, of course, Buddhists aren't the only ones, and they sort of they're trying to educate themselves in the way that society sort of recognizes is very worthwhile. They see the monks, or the people who follow the rules of monks, at least, you know, they are behaving kind of with good morality, at least, you know, good ethics, and you know, they're sort of a good example for everybody else to follow. And when somebody wants advice about what to do about a certain situation, you know, what's proper behavior, the monks give some inspiration, don't they? Or the monks or the nuns, you know, they give some good advice, or they can just give an example, you know, and say, this is right, that's wrong, you know, and this is what you should do. this is the way to avoid suffering. So that they are playing a role in society, but they need to be educated to be able to play that role. So there's an education system. The education system is going to be a monk, and then finding your teacher, and then having lessons from him, and learning the Buddhist scriptures, and discussing them and understanding the meaning of them, and being able to apply that meaning in the modern situation, wherever you are, whatever society. What does it mean for where you are in your society now? Then, yeah. So it's learning. It's an education system, but people weren't paying for it out of their taxes. It was voluntary, you see. Well, the situation varied. When large monasteries arose, like Nalanda Monastery in India, I think the king did support the monastery out of his resources, so it was out of taxes. But in the early simple days, it just depended entirely on people's generosity, and nobody was forced to give to the monks. They gave if they wanted to. So it's like just a way of supporting an education system entirely voluntary without any taxes. If you didn't want to give food to the monks, you didn't have to. And those that did were helping the monks. And, hopefully, in theory, at least, allowing this sort of educated class of people to, get some education together. Yeah? So it's like that's the way the education system was supported by, free gifts of food to the Sangha. It seems that their needs are more important than others. Well, that's up to you, man. If you don't want to give, you don't give, right? So nobody's making you give. Yeah, but if the Sangha are behaving really properly, people can begin to admire that and say, that's how, if I was able to live my life more freely, but of course I've got a wife, I've got kids, I've got my old father to support, blah, blah, blah. I've got responsibilities and I have to do what my father wants me to do, or whatever, then I'm not going to be a monk. But I admire that way of life, and I admire the chance that those guys have got. And I like going to the temple and praying myself when I have a bit of time, even though I don't really know a great deal about it. So that's ideally how it should be. So it's you're only like contributing to support the monks and nuns if you want to. So it's not that's not saying that they're more important than anybody else, then, is it? Okay. So you've still got a hand up, Jason, or should we just perhaps we should get on with some other talk now? But if you've got a quick question.
Well, only if there's a quick answer, but it was just basically, if you say, I can understand how doing those meditations, you can say to yourself, you can recognize the kindness of others in general terms. But how do you recognize the kindness of, say, an individual that doesn't necessarily benefit you directly?
Yeah, that's my meditations tend to be a bit abstract, all sentient beings in general have been my mother, yeah. But they do say, Tsongkhapa says it specifically in the Lamrim Chenmo, his big Lamrim book, that you have to, try to apply it to as many individuals as possible. And, when you're ready to, even the people who are hostile to you or cause you great difficulties, they're the ones especially you have to meditate on as being your mother, having been your mother. So that's a key thing, you see. It's not okay, this life they're giving you all sorts of hassle, this life they're giving you all sorts of, earache and so on. But in a past life, they have been my mother. So that makes you patient with them. It's like if your old mother, who's looked after you so well in this life, in her old age, she starts to be, demented and even abusive and even strikes you, because people can go crazy. We have these cases, don't we? Of, people have personality change with dementia. So they do become, really difficult to deal with and rather aggressive. But if it's your mother, because you've been so kind to you in earlier in your life, you don't get upset by that. You don't think, you don't despise that person just for being so, feeble and kind of, nasty. You just say, yeah, well, that's the generation of their life support system, their brain, and you still remember the kindness, don't you? And, you're touched by the kindness he gave you. So then you're patient with them and you try to, do whatever you can to see that they are still, kept with dignity in spite of their, kind of mental failings. So that's how you have to look at all beings, even the ones who are aggressive to you, and take your possessions, or, give you a hard time at work, or, destroy your society out of selfishness to get greedy and rich and so on. Don't pay their taxes. You have to think, well, yes, now they're ruining things for me at the moment, but in the past they were my mother. They have been my mother. I can't sort of prove that they've been my mother, but when you think of all those past lives and so forth, there's every reason to say, yes, they could have been my mother. They were my mother. So, they have been so kind to me. So that's how you have to think, yeah? Not just judging on the present behavior. Oh, they're not helping me now. But, that's why you think of all sentient beings as having been your mother, so that all of them have had this great reservoir of kindness and showered you, from that reservoir. They bathed you in their love, man. So remembering that, you put up with their present difficult behavior. Yes, but there are difficulties with that meditation, so we should discuss those. If anybody's got some, say, oh, I find this bit difficult. I find that bit of the meditation a bit difficult. Yeah, so fair enough. There's things that need to be discussed, because there are so many steps in that meditation. But we can try again at the the last half hour. We can do another attempt on that meditation. But we've got half an hour now, so we could just go through a bit of the verses, right? Because we've got one more talk in April, so I can finish everything off in April, but see what progress we can make. Yeah, so that's still on the first verse, still on the verse number 17. So we've said awakening mind, the great way is center post. Yeah, so that's what makes, that's the uniqueness of the Bodhisattva approach. If you've just got the wisdom realizing emptiness, you can get out of suffering, you can get out of the world. That's, you can cut yourself grasping the root of samsara. So you can go to your own individual liberation. So through the wisdom realizing selflessness, you don't remain in the world. But through compassion, through, the bodhisattva attitude, through the awakening mind, then you don't want to remain in peace. You don't want to go to the peaceful place where you can just sort of forget about everything and just meditate on emptiness, in perpetuity. You don't want to do that. So wisdom saves you from being stuck in the suffering world, and compassion saves you from being stuck in this sort of, peaceful nirvana. So those two are kind of, are kind of at play here, and the compassion one is the one that's making you enter the bodhisattva vehicle instead of just going to your peaceful nirvana. So it's like there's two extremes. That's nice, really. The extreme of peace, nirvana, solitary nirvana, and the extreme of the suffering of samsara. So avoiding both of those. So that's the great way of center post. And then the second line of verse 17, support and base for mighty waves of deeds. So, yes, I think we can say, once you've got bodhicitta, the amount of virtue that you can accumulate, this sort of virtuous sort of merit, which you need to carry you to Buddhahood, which you need to sort of overwhelm your negative tendencies and your negative sort of imprints that are waiting to ripen and give you suffering from what the negative deeds you've already done, and you need to collect mighty waves of merit, mighty waves of beneficial deeds, and as I say, virtuous deeds, it's deeds that end up as happiness, for others and for you. So that's the only reason. That's the meaning of virtuous. And then it's like it's very energizing. I think if you develop bodhicitta, it's like you can really get a lot more done because your mind is sort of clearer. The energy of your mind is all kind of flowing in the right direction instead of being stuck in sort of dimness or dullness or darkness or lack of confidence and so forth. So very energizing. So you can accumulate a lots of the merit you need to get to Buddhahood. And then it says elixir making both collections gold. So I think this is like from alchemy, where they had the alchemists of former times, both in India and in Europe. They were looking for the magic kind of potion that would change, transmute, say, base metals like lead into gold. If they could only find this special ingredient, then they could change, the lead into gold and be really rich or something. This bodhicitta is like that, but it's not working on changing lead into gold. It's working on your two collections. So your two collections are your collection of merit and your collection of wisdom. So when you are going towards Buddhahood, definitely you need that wisdom, realizing emptiness. You need very, very clear meditation on that. So that's your collection of wisdom in deeper and deeper, stronger and stronger meditations on, direct realization of selflessness. But then you need your vast collection of good deeds through, actions of, kindness, actions of generosity, actions of patience, actions of, joyous effort, and actions of, all those beneficial activities in the world which you could do, whether it's practical help on a sort of a secular level, let's say, or it's teaching the Dharma, teaching people how to meditate and think and understand subtler truths, all that sort of effort you put in to help others. That sort of, the collection of merit on the conventional side, when you've arisen from your meditation and emptiness. So you go out and actually do something for sentient beings. It's not like you're only going to help sentient beings when you've reached Buddhahood, but all the way along you are helping them and building up that sort of reservoir of merit so that you are becoming a special being, So that's collections of merit and wisdom, and they become gold. That means like when they've reached their perfection, their fullness, then you arrive at Buddhahood. So then with a collection of wisdom, your mind becomes the Buddha's mind. With a collection of merit, then you achieve the Buddha bodies. So that's the gold, when you reach the Buddha level and they become the mind of a Buddha and the body of a Buddha. So your collections have sort of transform into the final results. So that's how I understand that. And so then it says, a merit hoard of countless virtues massed. So with your bodhicitta as your motivation and your driving force, as we said, there's a great build-up of virtuous acts. And then the bodhisattva, they say, he or she, they collect merit by more or less every deed, because every deed can be motivated by bodhicitta, right? So even going to bed at night and sleeping, you can sleep with the bodhisattva motivation, if you remember, or clean your teeth with the bodhisattva meditation, motivation. I'm cleaning my teeth in order to make myself presentable or, hygienic and healthy so that I can, meet other people and do the work of, whatever it is, being useful to others. So you're cleaning your teeth with a virtuous motivation of helping others. Of course, you can do that without being having bodhicitta. Yeah? We can clean our teeth, thinking, I'm making myself presentable or, healthy or something so that I can be useful to others. But that would be like sort of an imitation of the Buddha's attitude, the Bodhisattva's attitude. But that's what it means, I think, that you get sort of such a build-up of merit. Even ordinary actions can be virtuous because you're doing them with the virtuous motivation and dedicating everything you do towards Buddhahood for the welfare of all, something like that. So then the fifth line says, the hero conquer children, knowing this, make that most precious mind their inmost bond. So the conqueror children, those are the bodhisattvas, the conquerors of the Buddhas, of course. They've conquered suffering, and they've conquered all the limitations. They've overcome death. They've overcome the afflictions. So they've overcome any cause of suffering. not just suffering is. So then that's they're the conquerors, they're the Buddhas, and the conqueror children, we said they're the Bodhisattvas. They're the ones who, you know, they're recognized as being in the Buddha family. You know, they're recognized as being, you know, children of the lineage or something when they've generated bodhicitta. So those people, the bodhisattvas, then the trainee bodhisattvas, they make that most precious mind their inmost bond. So that's the awakening mind, the mode of bodhicitta. That's their you know their deepest promise. That's their deepest kind of meaning to their lives. That's what they're going to stick with, and that's what they're going to work on. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. Yes, so that's Tom Carver speaking there. So that's what the verses say about bodhicitta. So you can see his what he's really doing there is kind of advertising bodhicitta as being a sort of a wonderful state of mind, and you know, the bodhisattva path to Buddhahood as being the best of all paths. So that's all he's saying. He's not really giving much beyond that, beyond this sort of, you know, praise or a kind of a celebration of bodhicitta. But what is it all about? You know, how do we develop it? What is bodhicitta then? So he's not really answering that question, is he? So we've got to do that, but we've been trying to do that for some time probably. So we can say compassion is what it's all about. Wishing to alleviate, wishing to remove, you know, wishing to eradicate, wishing to prevent, wishing to cure suffering. And not thinking, oh, in the main I'm thinking about my suffering. No, suffering wherever it crops up, wherever it appears. You just take it as something to be removed. You know, just take it. You don't think, is it my suffering? Is it that person suffering? This person suffering? Do I like that person? Is that person really supposed to be here? You know, why are these people, you know, coming into our neighborhood? You know, you just kind of be like, have some sort of supremely like, you know, benevolent nature. It doesn't mean you're not it doesn't mean you're not skillful. It doesn't mean you have to give everything to anybody who asks for it. I mean, maybe a high level bodhisattva has got a different way of going on than we have, but you've still got to be skillful. It doesn't mean you would give money just to somebody who's definitely just going to buy alcohol with it. You know, and how do you know when you see a beggar on the street, a homeless person or street kind of, you know, street dweller? How do we know what they're going to use the money for? Well, it's difficult, isn't it? You know, so I'm not giving money to that beggar. He'll only spend it on drink. Well, maybe he's hungry as well. We don't know, do we? So maybe he would buy some food. So yeah, it's, even if we are skillful, it's still difficult to, you know, there's lots of grey areas. Of course, that's a whole problem about trying to be good, isn't it? You know, it's very difficult to be skillful about it. Yeah, but in general, you know, in principle, you know, we have that wish to help, even if we can't express it or can't do it properly. You know, that's what we're heading to Buddhahood for. You know, to be skillful, become skillful about that. So to generate bodhicitta, then two methods, two time-honored and, you know, authenticated ways of generating bodhicitta. The one is the 6 cause and 1 effect method, which we were just sort of, you know, did a glancing meditation at this morning. And the other one is the method of exchanging self and equalizing and exchanging self and others, which I'm not going to talk about today. But both of those have their, you know, authentic kind of sources. The 6 cause and 1 effect method is maybe more associated with you know, the Maitreya Asanga side of the you know, lineage of teachings, and equalizing and exchanging self and others more like with the Manjushri side and the Shantideva. Yeah, so both of those were brought together by Atisha, by Tom Karpa. So both of those methods were flourished in Tibet. So and they can be combined into one long sort of series too. But today we're just trying to do a little kind of, you know, practice meditation on the first series of 6 cause and 1 effect. So that's we do that meditation again, but you can see that just to go over the main points, like now we should really start off with equanimity in the classic presentation. It's not one of the 6 causes. We say 6 causes and 1 effect. So that's kind of the name of the meditation, 6 causes and 1 effect. But we don't put equanimity is not one of the 6 causes. It's like a preliminary. Why is that? Because even people in the individual liberation vehicle, they will be doing the equanimity meditation as well. Immeasurable equanimity, equanimity for all beings. They will also do that. So it's not really counted as a sort of an uncommon sort of Bodhisattva trainee practice, because you find pretty well most Buddhists would be presumably doing something on the equanimity level, just to reduce their attachment, reduce their afflictions of anger and so forth. So that's meditation done by all. But then the first of the 6 causes, then the first 3, these, they could be done by somebody who's not in the Bodhisattva vehicle, who is in the individual liberation vehicle. They may do them, but they don't really do them as a main practice. They don't really do them as a kind of, as a sort of a with the intention of getting to Buddhahood, because they say getting to Buddhahood is too laborious. It's too, it's an impossible dream for me. I just need to get out of the suffering of cyclic existence as soon as possible. So they may develop compassion. Yeah, they may develop lots and lots of compassion, but they don't see it as being a spring, by as a sort of a springboard from which they can go to Buddhahood. They're not so seeing so looking so high up, So the basic 3 then: seeing all sentient beings as your mother, remembering their kindness, and then wishing to repay the kindness. So it's 3 steps in our meditation this morning. Maybe I didn't make them very clear methodically, but it's kind of, that's the way our thoughts were going. Maybe I can make them a bit more clear in the next session. So what we're doing, this is like the base, or the foundation. So it's like you're cultivating you're cultivating your mind, you're training your mind so that all people, all creatures, all sentient beings will appear to you as endearing, as pleasant, so that you feel a closeness to them and an affinity to them. So that's the idea. So whoever walks in through the door, whatever world in the universe you went to, if you stepped out of your spacecraft and you see all these sentient beings there, you'd feel feel warm and sort of affectionate to them. And why do you do that? Well, in this method, the method is because, yes, well, in all those sort of eons of time, when the river of time has been flowing, and all the mothers I've had, these creatures here before me, they could easily have been my mother. So it's trying to work on the fact that when somebody has been very kind to you and loved you a lot, it leaves such an impression on your mind. It has in my case anyway. I remember that when my mother was very old and very worn and very, 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 very wrinkled face, over 90 years old. But she would appear to me in a very pleasant, beautiful light. So that's why I understand that bit of the meditation. If you do think of somebody has been your mother, and you shared her body with you, you grew inside her body, and she did all those, endless tasks of cleaning you and feeding you when you were helpless, and trying to cheer you up when you were crying and stuff. Then that leaves a lasting kind of, imprint on your mind, doesn't it? So that when you see that person in the future, 30 years later, you're still thinking them with great kind of affection, aren't you? They still appear to you in that very pleasant way. So naturally you feel affection. Naturally you feel, like being nice to them, because they appear so wonderful to you. So if you can make all sentient beings happen like that, then how wonderful it would be. And it's just an abstract thing in most people's meditations, because they don't have time to go through individual cases, but they just think of all sentient beings, which is okay. But the more of the individual people, that person's been my mother, this person's been my mother, of your acquaintance, then the stronger that meditation, the more effective it is. You actually remember that person's been my mother, this person's been my mother. So then when you meet them, then it comes to mind that you've thought like that, and make a difference. Yeah, so then you see them all as so pleasant to you, because you remember their kindness. But then, of course, if they are suffering, then you want to alleviate that suffering. That's sort of another part of the natural part of the process, if you've done it, if you're on the wavelength. And then, because you've meditated on the Four Noble Truths, you see that all people in samsara are suffering in some way or other. They're suffering because of being born into samsara and having these bodies and these dysfunctional tendencies in the minds. They don't know the difference between, attachment and love. They don't know sort of how to be patient instead of getting angry. They don't know how to, stop worrying about money and less important things, and be satisfied with what they've got. They want more and more and more, because they're fixated on pleasure coming through material things and so on. So, we've all got some kind of, way in which, samsara sort of got a hook into us, and kind of, not letting go. So all people are suffering in some way or other, all creatures. And then, so then the wish to help them can grow and grow as your, understanding of the Four Noble Truths deepens. So that's your basics. And then on top of that, you've got the next set of causes. We had 6 causes, remember. So all sentient beings have been your mother. They've been kind to me. I'm happy to repay that kindness. Basic 3. Then 3 on top of that, sort of the 3 of the method. The method of actually, how are you going to, the method of actually training your mind to see people as precious and work for their benefit. We have this sense of love, this affectionate love, because they appear to us in a beautiful light, a wonderful light. Then we love them, and that means we want to give them happiness. And if they're suffering, we want to remove their suffering. That's compassion. And then how are we going to do it? I will do it. Whoever is whatever anybody else does, I'm going to do it. So the third one is this is the special determination, this high resolve or special intention, extraordinary attitude. I'll do it. I'm not quite sure how, but I'm going to help those people. They're suffering. I'm going to help them. So that's that determination. And then, after that, the effect of all those 6 procedures is the result. It's like awakening mind, it's bodhicitta. So that's the aspiration, the main aspiration to work for the benefit of others, and, sort of coinciding with that or joining together with that, coming together with that, the aspiration, to become Buddhahood, to become a Buddha in order to do that. So that's all on verse 17, really. So we don't have much time to go into the other perfections. So I look forward to be able to do that next time, really, now, because, once you become a bodhisattva, it's not just enough to develop bodhicitta, but then you really got to train in the trainings of a bodhisattva. So you really got to work on those, the activities which will benefit others. And those are contained within the 6 perfections. So that's the perfection of giving, and then morality or ethics, then perfection of forbearance or patience, then the perfection of diligence or enthusiastic perseverance, then the perfection of concentration, and then the perfection of wisdom. So the next 6 verses have all got all refer to one of those 6 activities that you really engage in, not just once or twice, but, you know, over many lifetimes, where you are then, you know, acting in accordance with it, with your bodhisattva ideal, putting it into practice. But if we're going to have another meditation, we haven't really got time to start to go much into those. Yeah, so I used to think, oh, look, getting to be a bodhisattva, you know, generating bodhicitta, that would be a wonderful achievement, yeah. But when you read Tsongkhapa's, you know, great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, it's like, that's just, you know, that's just the beginning, you know, you just enter the Mahayana path, then you've got to train in the 6 perfections for many, 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 many lifetimes. So, you know, it's Tsongkhapa's, you know, his idea of what the training is very, it's a very sort of very, very strong, deep training. That's you don't take a rest once you realize bodhicitta. That's just when you're just getting started. So let's see what he says about the 6 perfections. So you need to, he's one way of looking at it, he says, is, you know, to say, and you need in your bodhisattva progress, you know, of course you're trying as much as possible to help others, of course, yeah. So that's the main agenda. But of course, you've got to have the right resources to be able to do that. You've got to have the right, sort of qualities yourself. So you're practicing the perfections, and then, you know, you'll gradually increase or improve your own qualities, your own abilities as you go along from life to life. So he's saying, you know, you need resources to use if you're going to help other people. You need to be able to collect resources. You need resources to come to you, and they will come out of generosity. So the first of the 6 perfections, you know, you're practicing generosity, trying to help others, but also, you know, you will get the resources you need in wealth and good conditions like that come from generosity. And then, you know, you need this perfect human rebirth. You need a body with which you can act as a bodhisattva, a body which you can get involved with and working for others, you know, a sort of a bodily vehicle in which you can study the scriptures and study the teachings. So that's, you know, instead of, you know, the only body that's really good for that is the human body. So the precious human rebirth. And how do you get one of those? Well, that's through the practice of ethical discipline. That's the practice of morality. So that's the second of the perfections. You know, the morality of restraining from those negative actions of body, speech, and mind. And then, as a result of the practice of the perfection of patience, which is the third of the 6 perfections, then you can work with others. You know, then in the future you get good companions to work with. You know, the ripening up effect of, you know, all your acts of patience is in future lives as you progress. You know, you are able to work with others, and you get suitable people coming to you that you can work with and perform your vast deeds. And the next perfection is the perfection of diligence or joyous perseverance or joyous enthusiasm. And so this is, you know, this practicing this in future lives gives you the strength to be able to perform great deeds. You know, it gives you the ability to carry these deeds through to completion. If you have, you know, a stronger kind of, you know, imprint for practicing joyous perseverance in the past, when you meet your tasks in this life, you'll be able to, you know, do them and get through them, bring them to completion. And so, you know, and also it says we need to, when we have a human bodily basis, when we are born into samsara, we will be tempted by the afflictions, you know, the samsaric temptations of desire and, you know, anger and sort of aversion and kind of, you know, selfishness and all these things, you know, that we won't be like, you know, just isolated from them, because we'll still be, you know, faced with dealing with those afflictions. But our power of concentration, that's a fifth of the six perfections, a power of concentrating our mind on what's important and be able to sort of, you know, resist the temptations of the kind of, you know, the afflictions of laziness and kind of, you know, selflessness and so forth. We'll be able to, you know, keep a mind on the job and resist the temptations through practice of the perfection of concentration or meditative stabilization. And then the last one is the emptiness, of course, you know, or, so when we can do all our actions out of a sense of emptiness, in a sense of knowing that all phenomena are empty, then our actions will be much more skillful. Our actions will be much more, you know, kind of to the point, and you know, we won't be making so many mistakes. And also the conventional wisdom, you know, what is a good thing to leave and not do, what is a good action to actually do. You know, the discrimination between what is wise, what is skillful, what is helpful, or what is just you know, it means well, but it doesn't actually, you know, it's not actually going to succeed because it's not a very good idea. You know, all this sort of the wisdom of being able to make your choices like that. That's going to affect, you know, the continual practice of the perfection of wisdom. So that's just, you know, a quick look at the six perfections. We haven't got time to go into the words of the verses now, so that we'll do that for our last, as part of our last section, our last session. Is it the 11th of April, Jason? I think it's the 11th. Sunday, the 11th of April, the Sunday after Easter.
Joe will be able to confirm the date in the chat.
Yeah, I think I looked it up this morning. I think it's the 11th of April. So I suggest now we have another little meditation, because it's really good to let these things sink into the mind, you know, for me at least, you know. If I'm meditating myself, I usually try to meditate in emptiness. That's what I most like to meditate on. But these meditations on bodhicitta compassion are very, very important, because your mind will respond. It's not just intellectually agreeing, oh yes, that's a nice idea, okay. But, you know, to really sort of, you know, let it sink into the mind a bit. So it's, oh yes, it really is like that, you know, that really is the best way to go. So if we just relax our minds a bit for a bit of silent breathing meditation. Keep our posture, like an ideal posture is a straight back. And then we can relax all the other muscles and tensions we might have. And just follow the breathing for a few breaths. So as before, we are hopefully our mindfulness is aware of the specific place and time we're in now. We're in the present. Mind's not drifting away. We're in the here and now. But the here and now is, not just the little room that we might be sitting in, or the Zoom room where we are kind of, mentally come together, but the here where we are is as big as the universe. So can we feel that, sort of the presence of all those sentient beings who inhabit this vast universe? To a certain extent, we can. It's good to, think of the present and the place we're in as being the universe itself. So all those creatures in different realms, the hell realms and the God realms and the realms that the scientists can detect, many, many, many millions of light years away. This, expanding kind of explosion of matter from the Big Bang. So it's kind of, decorated or, adorned with the life of sentient beings here and there, and wherever. So all those sentient beings have got the same experience as us. Birth and death in the realm of samsara. Buddhas appear, their shining light is there. So we have our object of refuge. We have a path of wisdom. But they don't need our help. We're thinking of the sentient beings, the ones who are of samsara, the ones who make samsara what it is. So we get the blessings of the Buddha, the inspiration of the Dharma, and the support of the Sangha. And think about the situation of all those sentient beings, just like ours. And then we add in the time dimension, specifically and especially the going backwards in time. So where does it all come from? Well, those who study cause and effect, can they possibly admit that something could come out of nothing? How could the world just start from nothing? How could nothing become something? Even if God created the world, could he really create something out of nothing? Slightly more coherent than that, perhaps, is the idea that the universe is beginningless. And the mind's within it, streaming through, those eons and billions of years. Those minds streaming, evolving, transforming. Minds such as our own have always been coming to this present moment. They've always been, on the journey to arrive here in this present now. So the wind of change has always been blowing. like the wind that comes off the Atlantic, you know, the wind, you stand on the Atlantic shore, Wales, North Scotland or somewhere, and there's just that wind coming off the Atlantic. It's just been coming forever. Wind of change, carrying along your mind. So how many transformations I have gone through, how many lives I have taken, how many species have I been, you know, species that are now extinct on this earth, but I was one of them. I lived in the sea, and I lived on the land, I lived in the mud, I lived on the dry deserts, I lived on the mountains. I was a creature that spent lots of time flying in the air as an insect or a bird. I was born in deep suffering of the hell realms, or in the sensuous pleasures of the desire realm gods, or the meditative tranquility of the form and formless realm divine being. And so there I met all these other creatures going through the same transformations. Sometimes we warred together. Sometimes we, you know, were very intimate and friendly together. Sometimes I ate the body of that creature. Sometimes that creature ate my body. Sometimes I stole from him. Sometimes she stole from me. All these different, you know, relationships of help and harm. I've been through so many with so many different creatures. So this is a meditation on equality, equanimity, I mean. Not just looking at the present, oh, that person's so nasty to me, oh, that person's so nice to me. But look back through the history of all our lives and say, everything gets evened out. Because, you know, we've had so many different relationships with so many different people of so many different kinds, that in the end, you know, I can look upon all those with equanimity. They're all kind of the same level of just kind of mixture of help and harm. So who's different from who, you know? Just sort of a calm sense of everybody's just, you know, we've been everything with everybody. So just sit back and just don't get excited about their present special behavior. Now, out of all those relationships that I have had with all those different sentient beings, one relationship stands out, and that is the relationship of, mother and child. Why does it stand out? Because it is so outstandingly, an example of kind love, special love, special dedication of her for me. Especially when we're human beings, but we see it in many other animals too. And who knows, in other planets and other worlds and other systems, may there be other forms of mothers looking after children that we've never thought of yet. But the basic theme is the same, it's a great love, not just a temporary love, not just a momentary love, not just a love when we are being nice and good and happy children, but love for us when we're sick, when we are naughty, when we were even very badly behaved, even when we've grown up and we do terrible crimes, still, you can find mothers loving their children, even though the children are, big men who've, done, crimes that have really made others suffer, and they're in prison. But still, their mothers are wondering about those men, their child, still loving them, and the mother and the children, the men too, they will still be loving their mothers, thinking, yes, I'm sorry, I'm in prison. My mother's, needs my help, and she's at home, nobody to help her, and I'm in prison. And they'll feel sad. So a very special relationship, outstanding, loving. But when we think of how many lives we've had, how many evolutions, how many, transformations, how many manifestations in the flesh of this world, then how many mothers we've had then, how many times we have been cared for by creatures who are now complete strangers or enemies, or kind of, living in another sort of on another planet, in another solar system. But they were our mother. They did it for us. And whatever happiness we had in that life, it was on the secure foundation of their dedication and they're putting us before themselves. So of all those sentient beings who have been my mother then focus on their outstanding kindness. And we think then of, with great gratitude and admiration and fondness. Just like the mother of this life, hopefully for most people, not necessarily everybody, of course. But even if the mother just bore you in her body and then, she passed away when you were very young, still that was a enormous gift that she should go through that 9 months of anticipation and kind of worry and kind of preparation and kind of physical difficulty and the dangers of childbirth, and you came out, so even that is a marvel. So there is a connection of love then, which connects us to all sentient beings in the universe, or at least as many as we can think of, in the sense that our previous lives are so many that so many of those sentient beings out there, they do connect us with a kind of a golden kind of thread of love, because they were so kind to us at one time, and they really did their best for us. So that's really marvelous. So the natural way of thinking then, when we realize people have been so kind to us, then whenever they need help, we naturally feel like helping them. So they appear to us in this pleasant light of being, somebody endearing, somebody pleasant, somebody we feel affection for. Gratitude to even. So they appearing in this pleasant light, we wish to repay their kindness, or we have this sense of affectionate love. So we really wish that they can have happiness. Naturally, we wish that. And if they're suffering, then it's another step just to say, well, they're suffering. Can't I help them? I wish to help them. So if you can get them to appear in this sort of pleasing light, affectionate light, then love and compassion sort of follow on after that, don't they? They're this sort of, the outcome of that sort of feeling of affection. So all those first causes leading up to feeling compassion, great compassion, because it's for all beings, not leaving anybody out. They all could so easily have been my mother, so I'm not kind of, ignoring anybody. And then the sixth of these six causal conditions is this high resolve or definite resolve or special intention. So this is where we say, yes, sentient beings are suffering. My mothers are kind of, caught up in the difficulties of cyclic existence, don't know how to resolve them. So I have some idea of what to do, and I want to help them. Whether it's short-term help or, long-term Dharma help. Whatever I can offer, whatever is suitable. Make their lives a bit more comfortable. Or give them, show them how to take refuge in the Buddha, whatever it is. I will help sentient beings. I will help them. I will help them all. So we're not saying how we're going to do it. That's the next step. But at this stage, we say yes. And that's really what I wish to do. My future lives, potentially very many in cyclic existence. So why do I settle for some simpler goal, such as just having some comforts within samsara? We know that samsara does have some comforts, but it's just perpetuating a situation where, in the end, suffering is more dominant, and it's going from life to life in sort of a way that's difficult to control. We have our karmic, purification methods and so forth, but still, it's like we are being, buffeted or kind of, pushed by the waves of our previous karma, and thrown about here and there in the waves of the ocean of cyclic existence. But it's much better to have, sort of this more exalted goal. I will help other sentient beings. There is a great purpose to that. There is a way out of suffering. I've studied the Four Noble Truths, so it's only fair that I should share what I know and just try to encourage people in that direction. And eventually, there is a way of transcending all that suffering, conquering it. It doesn't have to be that we are just working at a low level in providing short-term solutions to people's difficulties and to other creatures' difficulties. So we can say, how do I actually, become to the point where I can really deal with these people, really help them, really be most effective for them, really show them what they need to know. Then I have to become a Buddha. Then you have to collect the two collections, the collection of method, the collection of wisdom, and progress from life to life. Become a great being, become Bodhisattva, somebody determined for the sake of others to get to Buddhahood. So that's what I'm going to do. So that's my final resolve here in this meditation. Make it as deep as possible, so that it becomes part of our personality, not just a wish that we have when we think about it, but naturally arising. That's a natural delight. That's our joy in life, to work for that goal. So I'm going to finish with a quotation from His Holiness, Dalai Lama. And this is one verse from his sadhana he composed about the inseparability of the spiritual master and Avalokitesvara. Meditation on His Holiness 1 with Chenrezig. So he says, the best of minds, full well aroused through contemplating how they have with so much kindness since forever cared for me, bless me that I engage in oceans of the practices for wandering mothers, plagued by troubles of the world and peace. So bodhicitta, awakening mind, the best of minds. So he arouses that mind. How does he arouse it? By thinking how his mother sentient beings have been so kind to him since forever, since beginningless time. They've cared for him. And then, so therefore, I've generated bodhicitta, and now I'm going to engage in the oceans of practices. That's the 6 perfections, which we'll look at next time. And these practices are for the benefit of wandering mothers who are plagued by the troubles of the world and peace. Thank you very much. So we have a dedication verses. Final Lamrim prayer by Tsongkhapa. I don't know if you have that in front of you, or it should be in the chat or something, or sent to you. Final Lamrim prayer by Tsongkhapa. Through what I've gathered by long efforts here, of 2 collections vast as space, may I become a mighty conqueror, guiding all whose wisdom is dimmed by ignorance. Unto such time held thy mind, Shri's love, in all eyes let me find the best of paths, of graduated teachings all complete, and please the conquerors by achieving it. As on by love's compelling power unskilled, in seeing the path's essentials as they are, expunging darkness from my greatest minds. The conqueror's teachings may I long uphold, where these most precious teachings of the best have not yet spread, or once spread have declined. With great compassion lifting up the heart, let me reveal this treasure of delight. May to the stages of the enlightening path attain with sons and conquerors wondrous aid. Bring freedom seekers' minds to glory, and thou conquerors' actions long perpetuate. With right conditions found for following the gentle path and adverse one removed, may humans and non-humans for all lives not part from the pure path the conquerors praise. When anyone endeavors to perform the best of vehicles, tenfold armor deeds, may those almighty always lend their aid, and oceans of gold fortune all pervade. Long life prayer for His Holiness, source of this world's every help, and joy wish fulfilling, Jewel, I pray to you. Matchless kind wantons in Gyatso, effortlessly be your aims attained. Thank you very much. Stop there, but there's some messages in chat now. But no questions. Yeah, no more questions. Okay, over to you, Jason or Jill.
Shall I just say thank you, Jason, to Geshe Graham, obviously, for another wonderful teaching this morning. Thank you so much for being with us. It really is making a difference whilst the centre is closed physically, to have this online presence and to have an opportunity for community members to come together is really wonderful, and we thank you very much for enabling that and being one of our teachers on our programme. So thank you, and thank you for everyone for joining us today. Thank you to Jason once again for co-hosting, and we do hope you'll all be able to be back with Geshe Graham, and as he said, the date is the 11th of April, and same time, same duration, so we look forward to seeing you then. And hopefully you've seen that we've got a series of teachings from Lynn Knight coming up as well, and those start on the 21st of March. So I think that's 2 weeks' time. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and the sun has just come out here, so hopefully it is with you too. And I wish you well, and we will see you soon. Thank you once again, Geshe Graham. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.